Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you. Oh, hey, it's me, Abby Stumble, on my podcast, The Connected Life.
Wait, our podcast, you jerk.
I was just so excited because you always start the episodes, and I got so excited.
I always had the podcast because I had the Liberation Project, and so it was like, I have a podcast, and then all of a sudden you're trying to like
It's my podcast.
take what I got here.
I'm not sharing it with you at all.
What's happening today? Today we're gonna have an interesting episode.
Oh, it's
Justin's
gonna be
especially gonna be a fly on the wall in this one.
You are. We have a special guest. She actually, we don't want her to even be a special guest. We want her to just be a household name in y'all's houses because she is epic in every way. I don't know how to put into words. She has actually probably saved my life. The truth is, and we talk about this all the time, I met this woman when I was 7 and she was 5.
Not a woman.
This woman.
No. I know. I realized when I said
I met
woman,
this
it
woman
makes it
who was a
sound
child when I was 5.
well, you're a woman now, but I
am.
met you when I was younger. And honestly, having somebody who believed in me and loved me and knew me and was with me through thick and thin, we talk all the time. That is why we didn't have to do crazy, destructive life decisions, because we always knew we had an ally. She has helped me see God differently. She has tangibly showed me what love and faithfulness and wisdom look like in life, and I am consistently amazed by her. She's, besides Justin, the thing in life I am most thankful for. And so people are probably bored listening to me just say these things.
I just want to say that I want to keep coming on here just to listen to the intro.
Yeah, the affirmations.
Yeah, I'm eating
Pietze's
it
over
all
here.
up.
She's like, I'm not bored. Keep
I
going.
know. I'm like, go
Keep
ahead.
going.
I'm
Great.
loving this. I think this is great
Yeah.
content.
Did you think
Everyone
that
wants
person
to
was
hear
really
this.
awesome?
Oh, I thought she was amazing.
Yeah. I bet you
Yeah.
want to be her, huh?
So
I
I bring
do.
her on the show because the truth is I want to show her off to the world, and because we have conversations all the time that inspire me and challenge me and change me. And so we bring you on so we can just have these conversations in front of people.
Yeah, and plus we didn't have anyone else to interview.
100%.
With that said,
So today,
Today we're talking about sex.
so we're gonna like there's multiple different episodes where we've talked about sex.
What?
And, yeah.
Let's talk about sex.
And a couple times with Pete's here, and Pietze's going to get into, like, you guys are going to get into more stuff about the woman side of things, and I'm just going to hang back a lot more
yeah,
on this,
we're going
right?
to get into some anatomy.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. And I gave this talk to a bunch of consultants that I train.
Yeah.
And the men loved this talk because it felt like I clued them into things they had never heard or understood.
Yeah.
And they felt so excited to start to get, and actually one of the men is married and he went back and talked to his wife about it, and it helped her.
That's so funny. I think men, it can be so difficult having sex with a woman.
Yes.
But just because it can feel kind of complicated, anytime you give them a hand up, they're like, "Thank you so much."
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, that's real.
It's just like, oh, I just thank you. Any advice, anything you can give me, inside secrets, I'll take them.
Yes. So whether you're married or not, you're going to love this. You're going to learn, and it's going to help you. And so today we're talking about hormones and how
Yes.
hormones affect our sexuality as women.
Why is that important for men?
Because men want sex.
So guys, if you listen closely, then you can kind of understand what's going on.
We're trying to help shroud the mystery of
Yeah.
how women work in sexuality.
But I will
Yeah.
say both Abby and I have been through different hormone journeys, especially Abby. But, me pregnant, nursing, all that kind of stuff. Abby, all the complications with her body. I know for me with my husband, so many things. At first, it felt like they were personal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then when I actually explained them to him,
Yep.
and once I got educated, then he
Yep.
was like, oh, okay, I've got
is-
it.
yep.
And it took so much pressure off our sex life.
And I think a lot of women don't know how to articulate what's going on inside of their body because they're not aware,
100%.
or they just don't know.
or they
They're
just
not
don't
paying
know.
attention,
Yeah, or
they've
even
never
if
heard.
they are aware, then they don't know how to share it because
Yeah.
it's really scary, or it feels like, oh, I'm just making an excuse, or he's not going to understand this.
Right.
But like even giving women words for some of this and helping them like go on the journey of understanding these things are going going to help them
Absolutely.
communicate to their husbands.
Yep.
Which means if they can communicate to you guys, then you're going to be in a much better place.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's several things that I want to just jump into. First of all, we're all sharing from personal experiences. We've been married for 10 years. Pietze and her husband have been married for 12 years. And we are on the journey of having thriving sex lives, which looks in different seasons differently.
Yeah.
For me, I am incredibly thankful because my husband, and we've had multiple conversations about sex on this podcast. So if you are just tuning in now, check out some of the past ones. You'll be able to hear his heart and vision for our sex life. But him having core values about sex being about connection and about intimacy and about love really dramatically impacted what my view of sex was like.
Yeah.
And because of that, it was able to carry me through the hormone problems that I have had to have, because my body does not hormonally always say, oh my gosh, I want to have sex so much.
Yeah.
But my heart always does.
Yes.
And so there's several things that impact sexuality, and we're not going to go into all of them. We're just talking about the actual physical body today. But your emotional connection with your spouse impacts your sexuality, your beliefs about sex that you got from growing up, your bad experiences, the things you've learned from culture, your season of life. Yeah. A lot of that can affect your sexuality experience, how you were taught about sex, if you have shame over it. There are so many different areas that impact sexuality. But when I preach and speak on sex, I always make sure to mention hormones. Yeah. Because it is the secret thing that people forget to think about, and it dramatically affects your sexuality.
Let's say it's like the secret thing driving.
Totally.
Everything that nobody acknowledges or talks about or even realizes sometimes.
Yes.
Let me interject with a quick disclaimer on everything that you guys are saying. I have my own little disclaimer I want to put in there.
Disclaimer away.
Phrasing.
Put it in.
That was delayed Phrasing. For you over there, huh?
I didn't catch it fast enough.
Hey, so if you're listening and there's like parts of this where it makes you cringe, anytime like subjects are being spoken about, it doesn't matter whatever the subject is. If I feel like a huge cringe, I stop and go, what is that? Is that actually what they're saying is wrong, or is it that I have shame? I have some personal sense of shame,
right?
And I need to actually look further into that. So especially with regards to sexuality, if it makes you cringe, it makes you want to go, oh, I'm going to turn this off. I don't know how to handle this. They said that, or they whatever. Like, then that should be a very telltale sign of like, you probably have some sort of shame there, and and a belief system that's keeping you from having open, honest dialogue about something that's very healthy and very needed to have conversation about.
So good.
Yes.
That's so smart.
I remember actually when I used to, the first conversations I'd hear about sex, I cringed all the time. But there was something about the freedom that I saw that was really intoxicating.
Yeah. And it's so helpful to be able to, even with other couples, have candid conversations.
Yeah, we have those all the time. Right?
Yeah. My husband's not a part of this conversation, but we talk openly all the time. And it's just so helpful.
Yes.
Even to like bounce things off or be like, hey, we're struggling with this, or we're dealing with this, or even just laugh about things that are funny. It's just healing, honestly.
Yeah.
Yes. And there's some couples that like, because of your dynamics, you can't do that. Yeah. Like I know some couples that one of the spouse doesn't, like, it feels betrayal if they talk about it together. You have to both be on board.
Yes.
Like it has to be permission from both of you to share about things. And there's some situations where like if your husband's talking about your sex life to another woman without you there, and they're building a bond and connection, then that would not be good. So I'm trying to give all the disclaimers because people get weird about
People
this.
have so many different, up and down weird things about sexuality, the do's and don'ts. So
we're going to talk about hormones. Hormones are one of the, like Pietze said, the drivers of sexuality. And something that is interesting is, as a woman, our hormones are always changing.
Yeah.
They are not, I mean, first of all, they change every 7 years, where the set of hormones we have changes. So every 7 years, our hormones are going to be different.
So crazy.
But then not only that, every month our hormones are going up and down. And some women that's very regularly, and some women that's very irregularly. Yep. But the gist is our hormones are different consistently.
completely consistently. And again, there's so many factors that play into it. Stress can throw them off. Different medications can throw them off.
Yes.
You know, and it's just interesting because it's that invisible force that is greatly impacting your and your husband's life.
Yeah.
In so many ways. And again, it's interesting once you start diving into it.
Totally. So something that I have found, and we're just going to jump in.
Jump right in.
Things about hormones. So I have found that there are parts of my hormone cycle where I can orgasm so fast. I mean, literally, it's like 10 seconds of sex and I am like done.
Trigger orgasm.
Totally.
Which is pretty much amazing. That has never been me, disclaimer, but I think Abby is amazing.
I don't even, like, it's such a, it's not even that great because it's like, whoa, nothing. Done. like we didn't even get to, like, you kissed me for like 5 seconds. That was nothing.
That is so great.
But then there's another part of same hormone cycle where I cannot orgasm.
Yeah.
I cannot get myself to orgasm.
Yeah.
There is no hope for orgasming. And
Yeah.
it is not because me and my husband have learned how to be really connected emotionally, how to bring our walls down. And those are things that can affect your sexuality.
Right.
However, hormones can too. And so there are times, like, I have learned in my sex life, like, oh, I can feel the times I'm not going to be able to orgasm.
Right.
And because I know
early
this
on
is
in sex, you'll be like,
hormonal-
I don't think I'll be able to orgasm because you can feel it.
Yeah. Because I know it's hormonal, I don't think there's something wrong with our sex life, or my husband doesn't please me, or he doesn't know what to do. Like, I don't have any negative emotions. I just think this is how my body is not producing enough hormones to get
Push
me
you
over
over
that
the
line.
edge. Yeah.
To push me over that edge. Yep. And so so the first thing I want to say about hormones is they actually impact how turned on you get, how fast you get turned on, how intense you feel things.
How fast you get off.
Yep. If you like your husband.
Yeah, if you like your husband, if you don't
real.
like your husband.
Yes.
I know for me that there are things about hormones where, like, sometimes my body's very sensitive. So if he touches me somewhere, it actually feels like 1,000 knives are touching me.
Interesting.
Sensitive in a negative way. Like your body is like, no, don't do that.
Yeah. I feel like on edge, and like, it's like my nervous system is very aware.
Yeah.
And then there's other times where it's like, I feel nothing when he touches me.
Yeah.
And then there's the times in between where, and we were talking about this earlier. So much of this is hormones. Like, some days when he kisses me, it is like all my hormones are ready to go.
Yeah. I have a funny story about this.
Okay, go ahead.
When I'm ovulating, kissing is probably like my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah.
When I'm ovulating, my husband's breath to me is like the sexiest thing in
That
the
is
world.
the weirdest
Shut
thing
up.
I've ever heard.
No, it is like I can't get enough of him. Like
His breath.
his breath. When I am not ovulating, I think it is the most disgusting piece of you know what. And I'm like, do not kiss me.
Right?
But it really
that
has
is a
to do with
hormonal reaction.
And Johnny's like, oh, I can always tell when you're ovulating because you're like all about like kissing me.
Oh, 100%.
Wow, this is so weird to be a fly on the wall for this
I
one.
know.
But this
Keep
is what
going.
I'm trying to say.
I love
But
hearing
even
this
if
stuff.
men don't know this, so
Yeah.
like if I'm jumping you all the time, and that's what happens. When I'm ovulating, I want sex and I want it now. And
Yeah.
if you don't want sex with me when I'm ovulating, I have a much harder time with it than any other time during the month.
Why is that?
Because I feel like I'm going to die. Like, I feel like I have so many hormones in my
Gotta make a
body.
baby. Gotta make a baby.
Yeah.
Gotta make a baby.
I'm like, I'm going to go crazy.
Yeah.
But then there's other times when, like, I could care less about sex.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so if you're taking it personally.
That's when I dress up.
And what does that look like exactly?
Oh, it's so good. The banana
a pair
hammock?
of socks and a banana hammock.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes
Sometimes
there's
a
a bow.
tie. A bow tie.
If you're feeling fancy, if you're feeling
If I'm
fancy,
feeling fancy.
Fancy bow ties.
No,
Mhm.
no, I never
Every
dress
once in a
up.
while, a little fishnet stockings.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
I will say this though. I just thought of I had watched this study actually, and what they had done is that they had taken men's sweat and they let all different types of women smell it. The women who were ovulating, the sweat, like they were so turned on.
Really?
The women who were not ovulating thought it was the most
disgusting.
disgusting thing in the
Yep.
world. And so it's
Wait,
really
I have a study that I watched also like that, but different.
okay.
They did one with all these men, and they had them rate the scale of how attractive they were.
I've seen this one too.
So, like, on a scale
Yep.
of 0 to 10, how attractive are these 5 men? And when women are ovulating, their attraction numbers jumped like 3 numbers.
Wow.
Did you know that when you're ovulating, your physical face actually changes?
So that you
to
look
become more like
symmetrical,
attractive. Yes, symmetrical. It becomes more
Really?
attractive. Your hormones change your face so that it becomes more attractive.
So, like, here's a funny thing. I have these women who come to me all the time who are like single, and they're like, I just struggle so much. And I'm like, how do you struggle like once a month? Yeah. Like, they're like, my sex drive feels out of control.
Yeah, you're saying they're struggling with their sex drive. They are feeling super horny.
They're like, yes. And I'm like, how often does that happen? And like, sometimes they'll be like once a month. I'm like, that's literally your body. You don't have
anatomy.
A rest issue.
Yeah.
Literally, your body is telling you, I need to make a baby now.
Yes.
And so, like,
God set that up for a reason. There's no shame.
So I give myself a lot of grace, and I tell women who are in that, hey, like, once a month excitement for a few days, that is normal.
Yeah.
So, like, cut yourself some slack.
Yep. Totally.
But so if men don't know this, it can feel extremely personal.
So this is where it becomes the mystery box, where guys are walking around being like, I don't get the woman.
Oh, 100%.
And it feels like,
I feel like I'm in a maze.
She's Jekyll. What is it? Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Like one moment, this girl's jumping me. The next minute, if I even look at her, she's giving me like
the stink eyes.
Yeah, the stink eye.
Yeah, and the same thing happens actually in our sex, where like I have found that hormonally my body just reacts differently. So it's kind of like
some days it's like, hello nipples. Then the next day it's like, get away from my nipples.
I'll kill you.
1,000%. Yeah.
And then I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Oh yeah.
I thought I had it figured out.
Oh yeah. One day what he does is the sexiest thing he's ever done. And the next day he tries the exact same thing. And I'm like, why would you do that?
Oh, 1,000%. And like,
guys, it's a reality that you can't be a creature of habit.
No, you can't. But even sometimes the frustrating thing, and my husband and I laugh about it all the time too, because he'll be like, okay, so what do you think? I'm like, I'm shooting in the dark here. I don't know. Just start trying stuff and I'll let you know.
We'll try all
Put something somewhere.
Yeah. But I even know too, for my husband and I, like some days he'll rub me down there and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so good. You're so good at this.
Totally.
The next day it feels like he's rubbing
sandpaper.
Yes. And I'm like, get off.
Don't touch it. Don't touch it.
Am I doing it wrong? I'm like, no, it just doesn't feel good.
Right.
You know?
And this is the mystery of hormones. And I very much see this as a positive thing. I feel sad for men in this area because it is like being blindfolded and trying to like hit a dartboard, but you don't even know what wall it's on. Like you have no idea. You're like just spinning in circles, throwing crap at the walls.
And if you miss a dartboard, a grenade blows up right in your lap.
Yes,
that's
what
it's
so
like.
True. So we're gonna try to like kind of diffuse the grenades and help guys hit the bullseye a little bit,
but help women
you're
also
hit the
know
bullseye, guys.
But what I was trying to say is, the beauty I find in this is that sex has to be relational all the time.
Yeah.
Because there isn't, this kind of reminds me of religion. Like in religion, people want rules and systems, so they don't actually have to be present.
So
they don't have to get to know the person. They want to feel like they win. Whereas in sex, because our bodies don't work the same way every day, men actually have to be present and tune in, and we have to be present and tune in. We have to figure out what is going on with our body and what to share, and they do too. And so now it has to be a discovery process every day. Yeah. So you can look at that as a cruel joke, like, I'm never going to figure it out. Or you can look at it as an exciting mystery. Like, men are made to conquer things. Yeah. And so instead of seeing it like,
it's like an Indiana Jones adventure.
That's what I'm saying.
We're going to go to the Temple of Doom and we're going to conquer it.
It is kind of like a Temple of Doom sometimes.
Think about how though men play video games, so do women, but where you do the same level and you're trying to figure out a new way to get through it. Yeah, that is what sex is like. If you thought about sex like a video game, you'd be fine with your wife.
Oh, really? It's just a little game of Pac-Man over there, huh? Yum, 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 yum.
Just oh gosh, I actually don't know.
Oh man, that was hysterical.
Oh gosh,
I didn't even do that on purpose.
Oh man, that one it was flying right out, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So so we're just talking about he's
dying.
You can't,
I'm sorry, the Pac-Man noise is what really put it over.
Oh shit. Oh my god! I'm gonna try and recover. We're gonna keep rolling with this.
Dying over here.
I love that.
I'm here for all you guys. That's why I'm here for this conversation.
Yes. All the guys are laughing along with you, saying, "Thank God."
That's the only reason we're keeping you guys here.
Thank God somebody pointed that out.
Yeah.
Yes. So another part of our bodies that responds hormonally in sex is the level of lubrication that we have.
Absolutely.
So at certain points of my cycle, I am really dry.
Yeah.
And at certain parts of my cycle, I'm really wet. And what the interesting thing is when I watched TV and learned about sexuality through TV, because you learn a lot that way, which is sad and misinformed.
I'm honestly still stuck in my 15-year-old brain who wants to make jokes about all of this. I'm just interjecting that. So you're watching TV. Are you dry or are you wet?
Well, this is what I'm trying to say, is TV makes it so that wet is about if you're turned on. And that's it.
Yeah.
And that is one piece of it.
Oh,
but
so the woman is sometimes physically wet when she's not turned on.
100%. Yeah.
Is that an aha moment for you guys? You men out there?
For all the men? I'm like, for me?
Not you two. You guys, you dudes.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It has very little to do.
Yeah.
Like most of the time it is about, and actually our lubrication is a part of our ovulation cycle.
Yeah, it's absolutely. And actually, as a woman, if you don't know your ovulation cycle, it has nothing to do with numbers. Like you ovulate on day 14. Everyone is different.
Absolutely.
It's actually more about the physical science. If you know those, it's a lot easier to communicate with your husband. There's a really great book called Taking Charge of Your Fertility that is incredibly insightful about these things.
Yeah. And one of the things they talk about in that book, it was very empowering for us to read in that journey, because we as women need to know our bodies so we can give our partners maps.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So that we can actually help them understand.
Which, can I chime in real quick?
Absolutely.
Again, this is part of why we're sharing this here, is because us as men hardly ever feel like we have maps.
Yes.
And we're also like, there is for a lot of men, I think, this feeling of, I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. And and a lot of times women are like, if I have to give you a map, then you don't love me and you don't care about me.
I know.
And it's not romantic.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
and you just, we're not set up for success.
No.
Absolutely. And that's where I feel for guys, because I'm like,
oh, me too.
yeah, that could feel really defeating. And I can understand why a guy would then just shut down and be like, well,
There's no winning. I can't make
win.
you happy.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna get off because I can't win this battle.
I work with so many couples that the woman has expectations. See, and this is why we're having this conversation about hormones, because I'm like, if a woman has the expectation that her husband should always know how to please her, she's going to be disappointed. Then her husband's going to feel that disappointment. Yep. Then he's going to feel defeated.
And these are
and
unsaid
you're
expectations.
Things. Yes.
It's subconscious.
And so the idea that like men should magically know what makes your body work, and that is what a good sex life. I have so many couples that they have a fantasy idea about sex because we watch sex in movies.
Yeah.
And there's never a movie where the girl's like, don't kiss my boob right now.
Yeah.
There's never a sex scene where they swat the head away.
I'm thinking, have you ever seen the movie What Women Want, where he can hear women's brains and they're having sex, and she's like, why are you doing? And he's like scrambling, trying to figure it out, like hearing her thoughts, which I'm like, that would be hell for a man. But I do think that this whole conversation is so important, because even if you think that you have a healthy sex life, consciously, subconsciously, the things that you have watched have affected the way that you see it.
100%.
Like, I thought I had a great, healthy view, but then subconsciously, I realized I had hidden expectations that my husband could never meet.
Exactly. And I think this is
really
one of the biggest problems in sex life is the expectations of what sex should be like. Because again, in movies, they never show that women have hormones that affects their sexuality. They never show that there is times when their sex drive is high, times when their sex drive is low. They never show that sometimes they need lubrication. Sometimes they don't. They don't, like, there's no movies that is actually showing a practical sex life.
Yeah.
And so we create
But that's
the
not
idea.
Sexy.
No,
It's not sexy.
It's not sexy.
It's normal.
It's
Because
normal.
Hollywood's sexy. We don't need anything that's
and
not
everything
sexy.
is a fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's just going back to the wet and dry thing. If you're a husband and you can't get your wife wet, that doesn't mean you're failing
No.
at getting her turned on. That may mean her hormones just aren't at that place.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say typically for me, we almost always have to use extra lube other than a couple days a month.
Yes.
You know, and that's just typical, and we're used to it, and it's not a huge deal.
And for us, we never use lube, and that's, well, we do sometimes, but very, very
No,
Rarely.
not
rarely.
Yeah, very rarely.
But the idea is everybody's made different.
Yep.
And every hormone cycle, like I can tell there's certain things about my hormone cycles that are really helpful towards our sex life and certain things that really hinder it.
Yeah.
And same with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I think is super important is that we never talk about the fact that you have to communicate with your spouse. And so the more you know you and your hormone cycles, the better you can communicate.
100%.
For instance, we've all been there where you're having sex and suddenly your husband does something and it is incredibly irritating.
Totally.
You're just like,
Wait,
Yes.
that happens?
Yes.
I'm so sorry,
Yes.
Justin, to break it
Sorry
to you,
to
but
break
it
your bubble.
100%
And
happens.
the truth is, I think you're the most phenomenal man at sex ever. But my body
Duh.
just reacts like, ah!
Yeah, and you don't know why. Like, one day he's doing it and it's great, and the next day you're like, seriously, get off of me.
Totally.
But I think as women, we can feel like if we actually tell you what we want and we don't want, it takes the sexy or it takes the romantic out of it. And it's actually completely the opposite. And it's
Yes.
actually totally unfair to your husband. And it's a horrible expectation to expect that he's just going to magically know.
Mind read
Yeah.
all of and it's like
He's mind
making
reading
a
you.
man walk through a minefield,
Absolutely.
like where he could get blown up at any given spot.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Remember your advice.
So like one thing that like my husband and I do is like, you have to get out of the mindset that it's bad to communicate or that
Yes.
he should magically know. You have to tell yourself,
Yep.
no,
Yes.
I actually need to communicate. So I'll say, oh, hey, that's not feeling good. Could you try this? And I'll give
Yes.
him an idea.
Totally.
And
And
if
let me chime in real quick. And men, if your wife does that, do not shame spiral.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do not shut down because it's easy to be like, oh, well, fine, okay. Like,
Yep.
I can't please her. There's no winning.
and
I'm not good at
rather
this.
than being like, oh, this is awesome. She just gave me a roadmap. This is very easy. She's just going to
Yep.
lead me by the hand to the treasure. That's great.
Yep, absolutely. And so then I'll give him a couple ideas. If those things are not working,
yeah.
then what I do as a woman is say, I'm having a hard time.
Yep.
It's probably because of my hormones.
Yep.
So I'm going to shift to making this about him.
So good.
I'm
I
going
do
to
that
shift
also.
to doing things for him because I can tell he's still really in this and I'm having a hard time. And
Yep.
actually a lot of times when I shift to like having the attention be off of me and put it on him, then
Your body
I end
starts
up
to
getting
engage.
turned on.
100%.
Because then I don't feel pressure, and pressure
Yes.
will kill any
Kills.
kind of pleasure.
Yes, it
Yep.
does.
And so, and occasionally I will say this, there have been a few times that it's happened, or I don't know, however many times, where we just can't win. We're like
Right.
missing it.
Totally.
And the energy is bad. It's like he's kind of spiraling. I'm kind of spiraling. We're just missing it all the way. We will stop. We'll take a break. We'll even do something if we can, you know, or like pop in a TV show and then we'll actually try again.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, because we don't want to end in defeat, but we know
Right.
like, hey, if we can't actually push through this right now, so we
Totally.
need to shift
Yeah.
all of this like shameful energy that's happening here. We need to
Yes.
watch a movie or we need to
Yep.
get up and do the dishes or whatever we do. And then we can slowly come into it again. And almost always we can hit a home run
Yes.
again.
Well, and something you said that was so good is pressure kills pleasure.
Yeah.
And I think that is so true. And I see that for men. When men feel the pressure,
I have had so many guys that have come into my office
yeah.
and they have a problem getting erections and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And it's not that they're at a point in life where they're just too old and it's time to start taking the old Viagra. Like
Yes.
that's not the issue. It's, oh my gosh, I have to be something. And when I've seen guys get an alleviation of the emotional pressure to be something and break that judgment off of themselves, they're like, yeah, I can't put it away. Can't holster this
Oh,
thing.
absolutely.
You
And
got
I
erections
even-
all the time.
Yeah. My husband and I have even noticed that just regularly in sex, like if he feels pressure to come,
Yeah.
sometimes he can't do it. So like this
Exactly.
even happened the other day where we were in this really fun hotel and we had sex in this room in this position the day before. And he's like, oh my gosh, I love it.
amazing.
Yeah. And so I had my orgasm. Then I was like, how do you want to have yours? And he's like, let's go back there. So we go back there. But then suddenly he felt pressure because he
Oh,
could tell I was
right.
uncomfortable because I was
Totally.
kind of done
Yep.
by that point.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
So he's like, I'm so sorry. I'm having a hard time. And I'm like,
Yes.
no. So then you know what I actually did? I actually acted like I was more in it.
Yep.
And that's not lying. It was actually supporting him to be like,
Exactly.
hey. And I told him, I'm like, there's no pressure if you want to take a long time. Like, I'm fine. I'm not
Yes.
uncomfortable. And then he came in like 2 seconds. You know
That
what I'm
is
saying?
so true.
Way to go, Johnny.
Yeah.
And I will say this is what you're talking about, faking orgasms, basically faking being
Yeah.
into it. And I don't believe in being fake.
Yeah.
Like, because this whole podcast is about the connected life, which
Yes.
means you're not fake.
No.
You can't be fake and be connected. However, I have found that in sex, there are times when I act like I'm in it, and that creates something inside. Okay. When I chop onions, this is a funny analogy, but when I chop onions,
Here it comes.
Onion chopping and
else do you
faking
chop?
orgasms. Okay.
when I chop onions, my eyes start to tear up because I'm
Yeah.
really sensitive to onions, and I will actually start to feel like emotions because I'm crying.
That's so
Now,
funny.
I didn't feel emotions before I chopped the onions. It's just that crying triggers a reaction
Wow,
in my insides.
you're weird.
I know. I am very weird. But the other day, like that happened too. I was getting sick, and so my eyes were crying, and I was like, I feel emotions, but I don't feel emotions. It's just, it feels like I'm crying. I found the same in sex. When I start to, I can act more engaged in sex than I feel.
I've done the same thing to you.
What?
Wow.
What?
This is actually The Truth by Justin and Abby.
Dun, dun,
It's all
dun.
coming out
Dun,
now.
dun, dun.
We're all faking everything.
Well, I'm not letting women just get thrown under the bus on this
I love
conversation
that.
or
Yeah,
whatever.
that's great.
Like, and because it can be mistook as like when you say faking an orgasm, it can
Yeah.
sound like ingenuine. But there's again, it's like, no, I'm going to choose to engage in a way
Yes.
that even though
Yeah.
at this moment I feel,
don't feel
out
this.
of it or I don't feel this, I'm going to put myself in a position to love you and try to
Support you.
engage and
Yeah.
support you
Yep.
inside of this. And that's different than
I've
like,
never faked an orgasm. I
Right.
have faked how into it I was.
Yeah.
And oftentimes faking it pulls me into
Oh
it.
yeah, it's so funny because often our best sex has happened when I'm not feeling it, but I kind of just push myself into
Yep.
like, hey, I'm gonna be into it. I'm gonna act into it, and then I end up really getting into it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
they
then
say
we end
fake
up
it till you
having-
make it. Not about sex, but in
Totally.
life, like
Yeah.
fake confidence till you feel confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we end up having phenomenal sex, which can be
Yes.
super helpful.
right.
Which I think is a really valuable thing. And there are times, again, if you are faking it where you're disconnecting and performing, that won't get you more into it.
Right.
Absolutely.
Like if you're faking it like
And
that,
if it's
that
a
doesn't
lifestyle
invite
of
you
I
in.
just live over here faking that I'm into something, so that
Yeah.
this person is always happy. That's a whole other story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's a
not
totally
what we're
different
talking
thing.
about.
Yeah.
And I know a woman who did that. She just faked it for years, and that actually kills your soul.
Oh, absolutely.
It
You end up
kills
shutting
your
down
heart.
slowly over time to where it's really difficult to come back from that until you
Yes.
really get inner healing.
Yes. And so we're not talking about that, but the idea is when my hormones aren't there yet,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm having a hard time getting them, oftentimes I'll ask Justin to pray for my hormones, and he'll
Yeah.
speak to my body and literally say, Abby's hormones, you have permission to work, you have permission to get her excited, you have permission. And even though that works really well, there's also still the times when I'm like, it's just not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
But I'm going to put my heart into it by engaging,
Yeah.
by acting
Yeah.
engaged in a way that keeps me paying
Yeah.
attention.
And I feel like the biggest thing is to stop frustration before it starts. So when you can feel yourself starting to get frustrated because something isn't working out, just stop for a second, breathe, redirect them, and move on. And so many times it actually just has to do with your hormones. It's not that he's not suddenly good at rubbing you anymore. It's that
Totally.
it's that you actually aren't there. You're in your anatomy. It's not feeling good.
Yes. And the other thing is being aware of your periods, because not your periods, but PMS and all that stuff, because when I recognize like, oh, I'm just frustrated with everything he's doing,
Oh yeah.
I can take ownership and manage that.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, this
absolutely.
is about me. This isn't
Yep.
about what he's doing. But
Yep.
when I don't take ownership for it, I blame him or I
Yeah.
victimize me, and it creates
Yeah.
distance and disconnection.
Yeah.
And my job in being connected to myself is to take ownership for me,
yeah.
for what is my part of the sexual
Yeah.
partnership.
So one thing that's really helpful for husbands is that wives, as you begin to understand your cycle and when you begin to really know it, and if it's regular, now some women are not, I'm not very regular. It can
Yeah.
be up and down depending on the month, depending on if I'm pregnant, all that kind of stuff. But if you begin to have a regular cycle, husbands, put it in your phone. Set a reminder like, hey, this is the time that my wife is
They
usually
got
PMSing.
apps for that stuff.
What?
So they got apps
Yeah,
for
they have
that
apps
stuff.
that you can literally, and I have friends whose husbands do this, and it's so helpful even just on a relational level. Like, hey, she's probably going to be PMSing this week.
Totally.
Hey, she's probably going to be dry this week.
Right.
Hey, she might be horny. It might be a good
Totally.
time to
This
swoop
is a
in.
great time.
You
to-
know, but all of those things, that's not romantic. That's actually more romantic.
Absolutely.
It actually creates moments for romance.
And you mean the idea that a man's being purposeful and trying to...
Yeah, because I think for women, we like this thing of not having to say it. It's weird, but we want a guy to just know everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Which
we
is
feel
the
like
that we hate jumping over.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Men hate that, and women, that's like a big disconnect between the genders.
And I've sat with so many couples who like it's a huge tension point, and we're like, yeah, but your expectations are unrealistic. He's never gonna know. You need to get over what you think is romantic, because actually communicating is romantic and creates opportunities for romance.
And can I just say, like, I've worked with so many women like this, and I'm like, you're being a victim.
Absolutely.
Because you're refusing to take ownership. Your ownership is that you say what your needs are. I remember not just in sex, but in our relationship, I would need to say, like, I need you to hold me, or I need you to ask me questions, or I need you. Yeah. And I remember when I started that, feeling that thing inside of me. This is so not romantic. This is so not, like, I want you to read my mind and know my soul more than me.
Yeah.
But so it takes way more ownership for me to have to know what is going on inside of me and to lay it out for you.
Communicate it. Yeah.
So so you have to communicate. I'd say I made up. I was going to make up a number. I was going to say 90% of sex issues are communication, but I don't really know that that's the truth.
You don't.
I'm just making up stuff. But a huge majority of sex issues is about miscommunication. And so part of this is, if you are aware of hormones, that needs to be a part of how you are communicating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why not?
So let's shift.
Yeah.
Okay, you got. What are you going to shift into?
I was going to have her talk about her hormones during pregnancy and after pregnancy and how that affects their sex life.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would say, the funny thing about me is I'm probably the sickest pregnant woman you've ever seen.
I know you're throwing up so much.
I'm throwing up. I have insomnia, migraines. It's awful. If anybody has a magic cure, shoot it to me, because I would gladly take it. But the great thing is that I am incredibly horny when I'm pregnant. Like, 100%. I'm like, I can't actually move because getting up makes me throw up, but can you just come have sex with me? It's amazing that he still wants to, because I kind of look like a beached whale, like a really sick one, just laying there. But he's all about it. He's like, sure,
hon, I will help you.
Yeah, absolutely. But then as soon as I have my babies, I am like done. I have no libido.
Don't touch me.
Yeah, don't touch me. Don't touch my boobs. I'm nursing. They suddenly are not sexual. They are another human's food. They belong to somebody else. My husband always says they're on loan to our babies. He's like, you can have them for now, but don't damage them.
I will get them back.
Get them back. I will get them back later. But that was hard for my husband, because I went from being incredibly like turned on all the time to do not touch me.
Right.
And it's been a slow journey, especially with my last pregnancy. I would say it's really taken 2 years to bounce back.
To get your sexuality balanced again. And this is, again, about hormones. It's not about, I disconnected from my husband. Right. It is exasperated by not being able to sleep and having kids pull on you all the time. But the truth is, if your hormones were fine,
right,
it wouldn't have caused a
absolutely
hard season.
And again, like you said, you're not sleeping and you're attending to all these people and this little baby all the time, so it can just be exhausting. But one of the great things is that when sex is involved with connection and revolves around connection, then it suddenly doesn't become about like, what's wrong with our sex life, or it doesn't become a huge shame thing. And even for him too. And also, I still have a value on sex. Yes. So even though I don't feel like having sex, 100%. I remember, this is a funny story, and I might make people just die with this. All the moms are gonna be like, please don't put this out there, because I don't want my husband thinking this is gonna happen.
I can't wait.
After our daughter was born, we got home from the hospital, and I felt so connected to my husband, because we had just made this human together and watched her come. I mean, it was like one of the most emotional experiences of our life, was taking this baby home and having her together. We felt so like, we cannot believe we just made her. How did this happen? And so I remember like going down on him like the night we got home from the hospital.
So attached to you.
Because I was like, I love you so much. I want you to know, like, I want to show you all my love. He's like, gladly, bring it on.
I'll take it. I'll take all your love.
But that's because sex and connection had those two dots were connected in your brain before that moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Intimacy and sex were connected. So in that moment, it naturally came up because that is the brain rut you had made.
Absolutely. So it just made for an easy connection.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even in the face of like, I was like 2 days postpartum, you know? So
Yes,
it was
all
a
the
little
moms
nuts.
hate you. They're like,
yeah, they all hate me.
husband, do not listen. That will not happen to you.
Let's just give a disclaimer to the men. That is not normal. And of course, then after that, then I had times where I was like, don't touch me.
Don't touch me.
But because we had established connection, we had sex completely postpartum, even when I didn't feel it. And I knew how to get myself into a place of connection.
Right.
I knew how to get myself into a place of wanting to be with him, even when my hormones were telling me, no, 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 no.
Yes.
You know, I could still be there for him.
I wanted to ask you because you had hormone problems. When your body got sick, your thyroid is a hormone.
Right, you're
regulator.
talking to me because
Yeah.
they're thinking you're talking to Pietze.
Yeah, I was thinking
No,
that too. She's
I'm
talking to
looking at you.
Justin.
Yeah, and so you actually had. Why don't you talk about what your sexuality and how your sexuality went through that journey?
I mean, well, my thyroid was completely taking out. I had hypothyroidism that kicked in, and my thyroid was just, going to pieces. And all my energy levels, I had no vitamin D, vitamin B, all the things that were the core. And I had mono in the process. Everything that was energy-wise was just gone.
Right.
And so inside of this process, like, my body ached. I didn't feel well. I very rarely even wanted to have sex.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like my body could even, like, I couldn't will myself into making that happen.
Totally.
In that space. So,
And so we actually had sex probably less in that season than other seasons. The
Yeah.
interesting thing is I was really sick. I had mono. I had a lot of problems too. And so neither of us had any sex drive for probably 2 years.
and a lot of times we were really purposeful about having sex. It was more of a deliberate
it was a
thing.
choice. We are choosing to have
Right.
sex because we know it's good for us.
Right.
We know it's going to be helpful. We know it's going to create connection. It's going to help us not fight. It's going to give us healing. We know that it's good. So we're choosing because we know the fruit of it.
And sometimes it felt like work, but
Oh,
we
totally.
didn't allow it to become a thing that we associated with work. Like we
Yeah.
didn't decide like sex is work. We're like, there's going to have to be a little bit of work in this season because we're clearly going through some really rough stuff. And I in no way, shape or form felt shame about the idea that I didn't want to have sex during
Yeah.
that season of being
Yeah.
sick. I didn't feel like I was failing you. And, at the same time, you were going through something. So that was nice that we were able to go through that together. But even if you hadn't have been sick, I still would have been okay with like, this is where I'm at.
Totally.
I don't
Yeah.
like, it's hard for me.
Right.
So now,
it
what did
wasn't
that
hard
look like?
for
Did
you.
you
But
guys
it wasn't hard for
It
you.
wasn't hard
Hey-o.
for you.
did you guys purposefully plan it out, or was it like an unspoken thing? Or if you guys were feeling the loss of connection, then did you say, hey, let's try to come together and do something?
There was just a lot of self-awareness, I think, in that
Yeah.
season when we were sick, like in the way of like, I can tell that we need connection. I'm aware that we're not having a lot of sex. So we were just being purposeful. It wasn't necessarily planned out, but there was an awareness that was pretty consistent that we would have
Right.
open dialogue about it.
Right.
Yeah. I think that I have something that I've always prayed about this area of my life, and in every season, like I like, you know what's going on in our sex life. So you are very much aware.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
But I have, like, I'll have you pray for our sex life. I'll have my other friends, because I think this is a part of our life that needs to be supported.
Yes.
This is a part of our life that brings us strength. But so because I pray about it, I will actually, like, if we haven't had sex in a while, I will have a dream where I like want to have sex so bad in the dream, and I will know it is time for us to have sex.
Wow.
And it's that's not even because like now my body wants it. I just know like, oh, my spirit is trying to connect to me.
Yeah,
It
like-
is time for us to
connect in that way.
Yeah. And so there's things like that, and then there's also things we talked before, like if there's just like friction a little bit, and you can kind of look at the clock. I had a friend tell this story where her husband was really discouraged about life and just really down, and he's processing, he hates his job, he hates his life, that he hates where they live, like all these things. And she like just prays like, what should I do? Like he hates everything.
Yeah.
And she felt like she heard God say, go have sex with him. So she stops him from continuing the conversation. And she's like, let's just go do this. So they go and have sex. They get done, and she's like, okay, why don't you keep telling me about your heart? And he's like, I feel great. Things are fine. And literally it's like and I've seen that happened with your husband with your kids. You can tell that he has a shorter leash.
Yeah, so I can tell that my husband's fuse is a lot shorter for our kids when we need to have sex and we need to reestablish that connection.
Yes.
And we're bickering at each other. He's kind of not getting on with the kids as well, and so we'll end up having sex. And we even talked about that with anxiety. Like sometimes I'll be feeling anxious about something. We'll go have sex, it releases, and suddenly when we're laying there after sex, I can communicate what I was anxious about.
You can figure out what was going on inside
whereas
of you.
before I just felt anxiety and I don't want to have sex. I just feel really anxious. I don't know why, but I'll be like, no, we need to go connect in this way. And then after we do have sex, suddenly
it unlocks you.
It unlocks me. The thing that I can process the thing that I was actually anxious about,
Yeah. And I know that, women out there who have been taught this is your duty and you just have to do this and you don't get to say no, because the truth is both me and Pietze have the freedom to say no to sex.
1000%.
Because we have the freedom to say no, we also have the freedom to say yes.
Yeah.
If you don't have the freedom to say no, you're actually just a slave. You're not even saying yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want, if you're out there and you're like, oh, they're talking about having to choose and that feels oppressive to me, or that feels like prison or control. Like this is from a place of joy, a core value that we know brings us life.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like being deprived or forcing ourselves to do something. It actually feels like, no, I so see the reward of this.
Yeah.
I am excited to do this for the reward, not I'm feeling punished into doing this.
Yeah. Communication is such a big deal, and
Absolutely.
being willing to not just shut it down inside of the journey of sexuality, and really wanting to explore every conversation openly and ask for other people's input and opinions and journeys, and be able to formulate what you think and feel about a lot of this stuff. So
Yeah. And I will say this too. I think what goes hand in hand with this is dealing with the shame. So even like just thinking back to my seasons of being pregnant when when I'm postpartum and I don't want sex, very regularly my husband and I would have candid conversations where it'd be like, hey, I know I don't want sex. I'm really sorry. And he'd be like, hey, we're in a season.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay that it's a season. I know that this isn't actually you. It's just your hormones right now.
Yes.
And because he had no shame in it, and I had no shame that
it wasn't about him.
Yeah,
it wasn't
about him, and I wasn't
performing.
personally rejecting him.
Yeah.
And he knew that it wasn't about. I knew it wasn't about me, and I wasn't a bad wife. You know, it was just simply hormones.
Yes.
That was it. We could get over the shame of we could have a candid conversation, and we could actually be released in the season, knowing it's just a season.
And that is along with hormones, because the hormones are cyclical. Like they are a cycle that happens. And that is part of the thing, is having expectations that there are going to be seasons in your marriage where sex is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And you have lots of time and you want to do it. And there will be seasons in your marriage where it's harder, in that season when you have no, and I will say you are so compassionate with yourself.
Oh.
When you walk through seasons like that, you're very kind. You're not like, what is wrong with me? I need to get this back.
Yep.
Like you have a belief that it's going to get back.
Yeah. So I never beat myself up. And sometimes when you're in the middle of a season, whether it be if your body's sick or hormones are off, it can feel like it's going to be forever. Yeah. So I do a lot of self-talk, like, hey, you're totally okay here. Mm-hmm. This is not going to be forever. You can rest in this season. Yeah. It's going to be over soon. And you actually really like sex and you like being with your husband, and it's going to happen again.
Yes. And you're going to feel all of those feelings again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have a hard time with sex, you never get turned on, or you had a great sex drive and then it stops, we always recommend meeting with a counselor to figure out if there's heart stuff going on, if there's triggers.
Absolutely.
I one time in our marriage stopped wanting sex entirely, and it was because of a heart trigger that had nothing to do with sex.
Yeah.
And I figured it out in one session with my counselor, and then my sex drive was better again. So there are times that it's that, but also if you're struggling, see a medical doctor and get your hormones tested to see if there's anything off that you need help with. Because if you are missing, for men and women, men who get low on testosterone have no more sex drive, have no more energy.
Yep.
Hormones affect so much of our life, and we want you to feel empowered with them, not victim to them.
Absolutely.
So women, your job is to start paying attention to your cycle, to learn your body, to be aware of what's going on. Pay attention to when you feel grumpy, when you don't, I recommend getting an app. I use an app called Clue. It helps me write everything down so that I'm tracking information. Yeah. And if you are in a relationship with somebody, I would begin to have conversations about this part of the sex life.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so love talking about the sex on all the podcasts. It's so fun. We could do that for like months, I think. Justin won't let me. He says that would narrow our audience. So if you're out there and you have been listening and you are married or in a relationship, me and Justin are we are putting together all of the pieces for a relationship course, an online relationship course, a live one that we're going to do. And so if you want the details on that, if you listen with your boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, your significant other, and you want to grow your relationship, we'd love to have you email us, and then we'll get you on the waiting list for the information as soon as it comes out.
And you can email us at lfa@stumvalconsulting.com, and you can tell us, I want to be put on the list for the couples, marriage, romance, whatever.
Change our love life package. Wow.
Tell us you want to be part of that thing with couples and relationships.
Yeah. And then the other thing that we have coming up is our Living Fully Alive course, which is a course that helps you go through all of the ways that your operating system, your mind, your heart, your emotions, your beliefs, how your whole life is being operated, what keeps you stuck and what to get over. It's kind of the keys. I spent years in counseling, and then me and you, Justin, discovered a few keys that radically changed things for us and sped up the transformation process. And so we kind of share all of that in the Living Fully Alive course. We did one last year in January, and we're doing one this year in January. And it's radically transformed. People we know took it and were radically transformed. And then all of the people that we met.
Yeah. Even my parents, my mom took it, and then my dad partook in a little bit of it.
Yep. And it's been massively huge. So we'd love to have you. If you want information on that, also you can email lfa@gmail.com. We're going to be opening sign up and registration soon.
So on iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe for us, please. That's all we ask from you guys. Get out there so we can get the message out. And then go to facebook.com/The Connected Life Podcast and like us over there. Say something awesome over there.
And you can follow me and Justin on Instagram, Abi Stumval, Justin Stumval, and you can find Pietze, who is amazing. And she is Pietze Duffield, Duffield on Instagram.
Yay.
Fair enough. Bye now.